I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was a trick of exhaustion, the kind that makes your mind betray you in the quiet hours of the night. But even as I leaned away from the mirror, the feeling didn't fade. It pressed into my chest, crawling along my skin, settling like a weight I couldn't lift. I moved to the bed, hoping the soft mattress, the familiar sheets would pull me back into reality. I pulled the covers up, breathing shallowly, counting each second. My eyes flicked again toward the mirror, and there it was. I told myself I imagined it. I blinked rapidly, forced myself to focus on the shadows that danced with the wind outside, the soft rustle of leaves brushing against the window. But the reflection, it stayed. It was me, exactly, but wrong. There was something in the way it watched, something deliberate in the tilt of its head, the narrowing of its eyes. It wasn't just copying, it was waiting, learning. I wanted to run, to escape the house, but every step felt sluggish, like the floor had melted beneath my feet. I reached for the doorknob, but my hand trembled, and for a moment, I swore I saw the reflection's hand reach out too, mimicking me, hovering in perfect sync. I stepped back, my breath catching in my throat. The reflection smiled again, just a flicker this time, like it had tested the boundaries, teasing me. My pulse raced, my fingers tightened into fists. And then I heard it, soft at first, almost imperceptible. A whisper behind me, a sound that could have been the wind, or maybe the old pipes in the wall. "Come closer," it seemed to say. I spun around, heart hammering, but the room was empty, so only the furniture, the bed, the same walls I had always known. Yet the air had changed. It carried a coldness that shouldn't have been there. It pressed against me, brushing against my neck, seeping under my sleeves, wrapping around me like a living thing. I told myself it was fear, that my imagination was taking control. But then I heard a second sound, a faint, soft laughter, almost human, echoing somewhere behind the walls. It wasn't a laugh I recognized. It didn't belong to anyone I knew. I froze again. My gaze fell back on the mirror. My reflection didn't blink this time. It just stared, and then slowly it moved its lips. Not speaking words I could hear, but moving as if it wanted me to understand something I couldn't. The room seemed to grow smaller, the shadows stretching toward me, elongating across the walls, reaching for the corners where the light didn't touch. I could feel a presence pressing closer. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But no sound came. My voice, my body, they felt distant, as if someone else had borrowed them for a moment, holding them just out of reach. I backed toward the door, fumbling with the knob, my hands slick with sweat. And then I saw it. Something in the reflection shifted. Not me, exactly, but like a shadow of me, standing just behind where I should have been. It moved closer when I stepped back. It mimicked me perfectly, yet with a delay, like it was learning how to be me. The hairs on the back of my neck rose, my stomach churned. I could feel a coldness creeping along my spine, moving with me, pressing me forward even when I wanted to retreat. I reached for the light switch. The bulb flickered, La sputtered, and then went out. Darkness swallowed the room, thick and heavy, leaving only the faint glow of the mirror. And in that glow, the reflection smiled fully, openly now, without hiding anything. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, caught between wanting to run and being unable to, and then I heard it. A soft, deliberate whisper just behind my ear. Not words exactly, just a sound that carried meaning, something that told me it had already entered. I turned, expecting to see someone, something, anything, but there was nothing. Only shadows and silence, stretching longer than they should have, lingering in places light could not touch. I thought, perhaps foolishly, that I could escape by leaving the house. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and ran to the door. But when I turned the handle, The cold pressed against me like a hand from another world. It held me back. The door refused to open. I slammed my shoulder into it, rattling the frame. My reflection in the window beside the door moved with me, always one step behind, always following. It smiled again, faintly, mocking, and then it blinked, just once, slowly, before freezing in place. I collapsed against the door, trembling. Every nerve in my body screamed. And in that moment I realized something I could not ignore. This was not a trick. This was not exhaustion. This was real. Something was in the house, something was watching. Something had learned to be me, and I had no idea how to fight it, how to escape it, or even if it had already replaced me somewhere I could not see. I took a step back, breathing heavily, heart racing. Torn, and then I saw it again in the corner of my eye, just a flicker, a shadow, barely there, but unmistakable. It was close, too close. I whispered to myself, trying to calm down, trying to convince my mind that this was impossible. But the shadow laughed softly, echoing off the walls, a sound that was mine, and yet not mine. And that's when I knew. Whatever this was, whatever had learned to be me, it was patient. It would wait. It would study. And eventually, it would take over. Because this was only the beginning. I told myself to stay calm, to think rationally. I told myself it was just shadows, just my mind playing tricks. But the minute I moved to the living room, the air changed again. It wasn't just the cold, though that pressed against my skin like icy fingers. It was the feeling that something had followed me, lingering just behind the edges of my vision. I didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed to stay away from mirrors, from reflective surfaces. But the coffee table, the picture frame, even the polished floorboards caught glimpses of something that shouldn't be there. At first it was small, a flicker in the corner of a photo of my family, a shadow that didn't match the angle of the lamp, a sound I couldn't place, soft, almost like breathing, but wrong, too deliberate, too measured. I froze. My hand rested on the arm of the couch. My eyes scanned the room, following every little movement, waiting for the sound, the figure, anything. And then I saw it. A chair turned slightly, that I was certain had been facing the wall when I last looked. I blinked. It hadn't moved, but it had. I stepped closer, heart hammering, trying to rationalize it. I told myself that I must have imagined it, must have moved it in a half-awake trance, but my stomach twisted into knots. That chair, just a few inches, could not have shifted on its own. And then I heard it. A soft scrape, like nails against wood. Not sharp, not loud, just enough for the hair on my neck to stand. I froze mid-step, listening. The sound stopped, but it hadn't vanished. It had moved. Somewhere in the room, something shifted. Something watched. I told myself to leave, to get out of the house, but the thought of stepping into the dark hallway, with shadows stretching and whispering at the edges, it froze me in place. My mind raced, and I realized that each shadow, each flicker of light, each sound, wasn't random. It was purposeful. I remember noticing the mirror again. Across the living room, seen near the hallway, it reflected the lamp's dim glow. And then I saw it, a flicker of movement. It wasn't me, but it looked like me. I blinked, my stomach sank. The figure, or the reflection, mimicked me perfectly. Every slight movement of my hand, every tilt of my head, it mirrored with a delay, subtle, like it was learning how to move like me. I stepped back. My breath caught, and then it smiled, slowly, deliberately. I felt it before I heard it, a soft pressure, like someone brushing against my shoulder. I whipped around, but the living room was empty. The only sound was my own ragged breathing, loud in the silence. I told myself I was losing it, but then I heard the whispers, soft at first, distant, almost drowned by the wind. And yet, Every whisper sounded like a word I should understand, a voice, or perhaps many voices, echoing through the walls, brushing my ears with syllables I couldn't quite catch. I reached for my phone. Maybe the light would give me courage. Maybe I could record this. Maybe it would prove I wasn't imagining it. My fingers trembled as I unlocked it. The screen glowed. The room was empty. But the photos, they weren't empty. Hundreds of images, photos I hadn't taken, filled my camera roll. Each one of me, sleeping, walking, sitting. Some were close-up shots of my face, some taken from angles I couldn't have imagined. And in each photo, the eyes, they blinked differently. The expression was always just a fraction off. Wrong. I dropped the phone. The sound echoed across the empty room. The shadows reacted. Something moved across the far wall, a dark shape stretching unnaturally. It paused. It waited. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't work. My throat tightened. I wanted to run, but the room seemed smaller somehow. The walls pressed inward. The air thickened, dragging each breath from me like I was breathing through water. I backed toward the hallway, trying to stay calm, trying to tell myself it was just shadows. But the hallway light flickered violently, and I caught a glimpse, a shadow stepping out from the corner. A figure. My figure. I froze. My body wanted to flee, but my mind screamed at me to stay. And then I realized something worse than fear. It was watching me. Not just watching, learning, waiting. I raised my hands, trying to reassure myself, but the figure mirrored me perfectly. Every twitch, every shake of the head. It mimicked me, and then it smiled. That smile, it was mine, but it wasn't. I backed into the living room. My eyes darted to the walls, the floor, the ceiling, trying to find any corner untouched by this presence. And then I heard the softest sound, a single step behind me, one and another, two. Not heavy, not rushed, deliberate, following, always following. I knew then, with a sickening certainty, that it wasn't just here to watch, it was here to take over. And no corner, no shadow, no lock would keep it away. And that's when I saw the mirror again, across the living room, and in it, I wasn't alone. A shadow stood behind me. My shadow, my exact copy, watching, smiling, waiting. I wanted to look away, to escape, but something in me forced my gaze to meet it. And in that moment, I understood. Whatever this was, it was learning to be me, and I had no idea if I was the one still in control. I tried to leave the house. The door, it wouldn't open. The handle turned, but the wood seemed thicker, resisting. And then I felt it. Not a hand, but a presence pressing into me, urging me back. Something that shouldn't exist, and yet it did. Waiting, patient, persistent. And I knew it wasn't going anywhere. I couldn't leave. The door wouldn't budge. I pressed my shoulder into it, testing every angle, every inch, but it was as if the house itself had decided I wasn't going anywhere. My hands shook. My breaths came short and sharp, each inhale tasting of cold metal, of fear. And then I heard it, a sound that made my skin crawl. It was a laugh, soft, almost polite, and yet it was mine. My own laugh warped, as if someone had practiced it for days in the shadows. It came from the hall behind me. I turned slowly. My heart threatened to burst through my ribs. There it was, standing in the hallway. Not a shadow this time. A figure. Tall, slender, perfectly mirroring me. My own face. My own features. Down to the tiniest twitch of my eyebrow, the curl of my lips. And it smiled. I froze. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to escape anywhere. But my body refused. I felt paralyzed, trapped not just by fear, but by recognition. This was me, and yet it wasn't. The figure raised its hand. I raised mine instinctively, and it mirrored me, exactly. Every motion I made, it matched. Every breath I took, it echoed. It studied me as I studied it. The hallway seemed to shrink around us, shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls, reaching toward us, leaning closer. I took a step back. So did it. Every step I took, it mirrored. Every move I made, it anticipated. My mind screamed at me to act, to run, to strike. But my body felt borrowed, not fully mine. And then I realized it wasn't just a copy. It was learning, observing, waiting for the exact moment to take over completely. I looked around desperately for something, anything to defend myself. A chair, a vase, even a lamp, but every object I touched felt heavy, sluggish, resistant. And in that instant I understood. The house itself was part of this. Complicit. It bent reality around me, slowed time, twisted perception. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the panic clawing at my chest, and I spoke, my voice shaking. "Who? What are you?" The figure tilted its head. The smile lingered, faint but deliberate. And then it spoke, not with words. Not yet, but a sound, a distortion of my own voice, a low, echoing, impossible vibration that resonated through the walls, through my bones. And in that sound I felt a message, though I couldn't understand it fully. It was claiming, waiting. I stumbled backward into the living room, my mind racing. The light flickered violently, shadows lurching across the walls like living things. And then I saw it again, in the mirror near the hallway. My reflection, or its reflection, was gone. The mirror showed only the room empty, except for the shadow lingering just behind me. I spun. Nothing. Silence. But I could feel it. Watching, waiting, learning. I ran to the couch, my hands gripping the edge as if it could anchor me to reality. I tried to think rationally, tried to remind myself this was impossible, a trick of exhaustion, of stress, of too many lonely nights. But deep down, I knew better. Something had me, something had learned me. I tried to leave again. The door, locked, solid, unyielding. I slammed into it with my shoulder, hard. Pain shot through my ribs, but the door didn't give. And then I heard my voice, my own voice, calling from inside the room. "Don't leave." I froze. It wasn't me. I hadn't spoken. But that voice, it sounded identical. Perfect. Infinitely familiar. And yet, alien. I turned slowly, scanning every shadow, every corner, every reflective surface. And then I saw movement. A flicker near the staircase. The figure. It had moved faster than I could track. It was closer now. Watching me, studying me, smiling with that same expression that made my stomach turn. I stumbled backward. My foot caught the edge of the rug. I fell, scrambling across the floor, heart hammering, every nerve screaming. And then I realized the figure wasn't just mimicking me anymore. It was interacting, anticipating. When I reached for the lamp, it raised its hand before I could touch it, blocking me. Perfectly, impossibly. Every movement I made, it was already there, countering me, matching me, shadowing me. I screamed. My own voice returned, but the echo was layered, doubled, faintly distorted. Another me? Or something else? I backed toward the kitchen. Maybe there, maybe somewhere else in the house. I could hide, I could escape. But every shadow, every corner, every reflection reminded me. It was learning. Every flick of my wrist, every glance, every breath was catalogued, mirrored. And then it spoke again. "You can't hide." The words were mine, yet they were not mine. They came from the figure, from the shadow, from somewhere inside my mind, echoing in the house itself. I stumbled backward into the kitchen. The room felt wrong. Familiar, yes, but stretched, distorted. The walls leaned closer. The cabinets loomed like they had grown overnight, and in every reflective surface, the refrigerator, the countertop, the knife block, I saw glimpses of myself. Not me. Not really. A flash of movement caught my eye, behind the kitchen table, my own face, smiling, watching, waiting. I couldn't take it anymore. My head spun, my stomach lurched. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to scream, to leave this house forever. But the front door remained locked, the windows unyielding. And then I heard it clearly, right behind me. Close, breathing, not my own, heavy, deliberate. "It's time," it whispered. I spun. Nothing. Only shadows. Only reflections. Only the house itself. Alive. I ran. Up the stairs, two at a time, every step a drumbeat of terror, every floorboard creaking under invisible weight, and I realized there was nowhere to go. The house had folded around me. Every corridor, every door, every mirror was a trap. Every reflection, a threat. I reached the top of the stairs, my room, my sanctuary. Or so I thought, and then I saw it just across the hallway, standing silently, perfectly still, my own face, my own body, waiting, smiling, patient, calculating. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, and pressed my back against it, gasping for air. And then I understood. Whatever had learned to be me, whatever had entered this house, it wasn't done yet. It was only the beginning. And that's when I realized something worse than fear, something that made my blood run cold and my mind reel. It wasn't just learning to be me, it was learning me. Everything I knew, everything I was, every move, every thought. And when it was done, there would be nothing left of me at all. The moment I thought I could lock the door, the house whispered back. The key in my hand felt heavier than ever before, resisting me as though it had grown roots inside the lock. Every turn was sluggish, as if something unseen gripped it from the other side. I pressed my shoulder against the door again, hard, letting every ounce of strength flow into it. The door didn't budge, the lock didn't move. And then I heard it, a sound I will never forget, a knock, soft, measured, precise, coming from inside the house, not the door I was trying to open. I froze. My heart thudded in my chest, hammering against my ribs. I could feel the cold crawling along my arms, slipping under my sleeves like tiny icy fingers. And then I heard another sound, my own voice, calling from the hallway. "Come closer." It wasn't me. I turned slowly, scanning the dim corners of the room. The shadows stretched unnaturally, clinging to the walls, crawling along the floor. And there it was, my doppelgänger, standing at the far end of the hallway, silent, smiling, watching. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to escape anywhere. But the stairs, the hallway, even the walls seemed to stretch farther than they should. Every step I took felt slower, heavier, like the house itself was resisting me, bending reality around me. I backed into the living room, desperate, heart racing, mind fraying. And then I saw movement across the kitchen doorway. A shadow flickered, like my reflection, but wrong. Too fast, too deliberate. And then it stepped into the light. My face, my body, my exact self. It raised a hand, and I raised mine instinctively. The mirror image tilted its head, examining me, calculating. The air around me thickened. Every breath I drew felt pulled from me like it belonged to someone else. I stumbled toward the kitchen counter, searching for something, anything to anchor me to reality. A knife, a heavy pan, anything. But the figure followed, matching me perfectly, anticipating every movement, every twitch of my eyes, every thought I dared to think. I screamed. The sound echoed off the walls, but it didn't feel like my own voice. Layers of me, duplicates of me, all overlapping, some higher, some lower, some warped. And then the figure laughed, softly at first, then louder, echoing, impossible, from every corner of the room. I ran, up the stairs, 2 steps at a time. My lungs burned, my legs trembled. And yet, Every step I took, I could feel the presence right behind me, not in the open, not visible, but pressing, always pressing. I reached my room and slammed the door, locking it again. My back pressed against it. My breath came in ragged bursts. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold on to my phone. The faint glow of the screen illuminated the room, and then I saw it. A message, not typed, not on the screen, but written in the condensation forming on my bedroom mirror. I'm already inside. I dropped the phone. It bounced, screen cracking, and fell silent. I stared at the mirror, cold sweat running down my face. My reflection stared back at me, but I wasn't there. Not really. My own eyes, wide and terrified, stared at something I could not see. And then it moved. My reflection, or whatever had learned me, shifted its position. It smiled again, and I felt it, a weight on my chest, like the air had become solid, like something was pressing down, holding me in place. I tried to scream, tried to move, but my body betrayed me. My limbs felt sluggish, heavy, unresponsive. My vision narrowed. Shadows stretched across the walls, moving like liquid, crawling toward me. And then I realized I could hear another sound, my voice, whispering from somewhere else in the room. Look at me. I turned slowly, terrified to move, and saw a shadow detach itself from the corner of the ceiling. Not a shadow as I had known it before. This was a shape that twisted, stretched, became a perfect imitation of me, my face, my hands, my posture. It hovered, waiting. I stumbled backward. My back hit the wall. I pressed my eyes shut. I tried to breathe. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real. But when I opened my eyes, it was closer, closer, closer. Every instinct screamed that I should flee. But where? Every door, every window, every exit had become unreachable. Even the hallway stretched and warped, leading me nowhere. And I understood with a terror that sank into my bones that this house was no longer mine. It had claimed me. I sank to the floor, knees trembling, chest heaving. And then I felt it. Touch. Not a hand, not something physical, but a sensation. A pressure along my face, like a weight pressing against my skin, a presence forcing me to feel its own form. I screamed again. Not just from fear, but from pain, from violation, from the sense that my own body was betraying me. The figure, or the entity, moved in the reflection, smiling. My own smile. And I realized, truly realized, that it had learned me so completely that every reaction, every fear, every heartbeat, it mirrored perfectly. I wanted to fight, I wanted to scream, I wanted to disappear, but I couldn't. And then the whisper came again, softer, closer, like it was speaking directly into my skull. I am you now. You're learning, slowly, but soon there will be no difference. I fell back against the wall. My vision blurred, shadows twisted. The house groaned as though it were alive, stretching itself around me, bending reality, folding walls, twisting doors, turning familiar corridors into traps. And somewhere in the faint corners of my mind, I heard another whisper, faint, quivering, terrified. My own voice. Please stop. The house was silent for a moment, only the wind rattling the windows, only the faint hum of the heater, only my heartbeat echoing in my chest like a drum of warning. And then I saw it again, across the room, in the mirror. Not me. Something learning me, waiting. I understood in that moment that I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. And I realized something worse. It wasn't just learning me. It was practicing. It was becoming me. And I had no idea how long it had been inside me, already shaping my thoughts, my reactions, my fears. I sank to the floor, trembling, and I whispered to myself, a single thought racing through my mind. How do I fight? Myself. I didn't know how long I had been trapped in that room. Minutes, hours, time felt twisted, folding in on itself, every second stretching into eternity. The air was thick, heavy, pressing into my lungs, making each breath a labor. Shadows clung to the corners of the room like living things, moving just beyond my peripheral vision. And then I saw it, my own reflection, or at least what looked like me, standing across the room, in the corner by the closet, not in the mirror, here, in the room itself, watching, waiting. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, to do anything. But the room, it had become unfamiliar. The walls seemed closer now, the corners sharper, the shadows deeper. And I realized with a rising panic that I couldn't leave. I tried to speak. My voice came out in a strangled whisper. What? What do you want from me? The figure stepped forward, smooth, fluid, perfect. Every motion mirrored mine as though it had memorized the way I breathed, the way I flinched, the way I hesitated. It raised its hand. I raised mine instinctively. It tilted its head. And then it smiled. That smile, my smile, but warped, alien. You belong to me, it whispered. Or rather, my voice whispered it, though I hadn't spoken. I staggered backward, heart pounding. I tried to scream, tried to fight, my hands clenched into fists, but every movement I made, it mirrored, countered, anticipated. I realized then, it wasn't just mimicking me anymore, it was controlling the space around me. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every object I tried to move, obeyed it. The house had become an extension of its will. I ran to the window. Maybe I could break it, escape. But the glass rippled under my fingers. Not cracked, not solid, as if it were alive. I recoiled. The reflection in the glass grinned. I spun toward the door. Locked. Again. The lock had fused with the frame. The handle wouldn't turn. My breath came in ragged, panicked gasps, and then I felt it. The presence. Closer than ever. Pressing against me, heavy, suffocating. I stumbled backward, crashing into the dresser. Oh, a drawer flew open, spilling clothes to the floor. And then I saw it, something moving under the dresser, a shadow slithering, twisting, and from it I heard my own voice. You can't stop me. I scrambled to my feet. My reflection in the dresser mirror wasn't my own. It had become more than a reflection. It had substance, shape, intent. It stepped forward, smiling, waiting. I ran, across the room, across the hall. The house seemed to stretch, corridors bending impossibly, doors appearing and disappearing. Shadows followed me, whispering, breathing, echoing my own fears back at me. And then it happened. I tripped, fell, and in that instant I saw it, my own face inches from mine, its eyes boring into mine, every feature perfect, every motion identical, and yet entirely wrong. It leaned closer. I could feel a cold weight pressing into my chest, forcing me down. My vision narrowed, my ears rang, my body felt borrowed, alien, and I realized with horror, this wasn't just a doppelganger anymore. It was me, or it was taking me. I struggled, tried to push back, to fight, but every motion was mirrored, every thought anticipated. I screamed, my voice fractured into echoes. The shadows around the room pressed closer, wrapping around my limbs, holding me in place. You're mine, it whispered. I slammed my eyes shut, heart hammering, breath coming in ragged bursts. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes, the room was empty. The shadows had withdrawn. The house was quiet. Too quiet. My chest heaved. I pressed my hand to my face and froze. There was something in the mirror. Not me. Not quite. The smile. My smile. And then I realized it. I was still here, but not alone. The last thing I saw before the lights flickered and went out completely. My own eyes staring back at me. Perfectly. And smiling. I don't know how much time passed. Minutes? Hours? I don't know if I moved or stayed in place. All I knew was that something in the house had learned me, and when the light returned, I wasn't sure if I was myself anymore, or just a copy waiting for its turn. I thought it was over, that I had survived, but the camera caught something I didn't see at the time, a flicker in the corner, a shadow moving where no one should be. And then I realized it had already chosen its next host, and maybe that host is you.